questions directly from the community, right, JY?
I think so. I don't think I've spoken to the community.
Yeah, so this is an amazing opportunity. JY has a ton of information, a ton of things that he can share with us. So feel free to ask him any questions. So the goal here is that now with AI, we can build projects very quickly. Like the issue is not building. The issue is not knowing Cairo or how blockchain works or what dependencies to use. Now the main question, and this is very new. This is very new, and we are adapting ourselves in this hackathon, right? Like, what is the new way to build, right? So the issue is not building per se with the technology. Now the issue is what is worth building, right? What is worth spending our tokens in? We need to be more strategic on what we're building. So that's why we're using these AMAs as me anythings, so we can ask key people inside the BTC, the Bitcoin Fi strategies or the privacy strategies and so on. So feel free to ask. You know, JY has a ton of information and a lot of thinking about the strategy where things are going and so on. So ask questions in the chat or unmute yourselves. I also got some questions that people sent me before that they couldn't attend. So I have those questions, but I would prefer for you to ask first. So yep, let's go. Let's go. Shut your questions. Lucas, Fabricio, Carlos, Santiago. Who else we have here? Mulandi, Carlos, Colorado. Perfect. So ask your questions here. If you don't ask in 10 questions, I will ask myself from the questions that I have written here. Let me open my questions. All right. Question in the chat or open your mics. If not, okay, I will go. I will go now. So one of the questions that we got from Dora Hacks, JY, is eh, what does it mean? So one of the ideas that we have for the hackathon, I don't remember if if you gave this one, but it's private yield on BTC. So the question is, how do you visualize getting private yield on BTC? That is, the recipient is not known. Who is this person withdrawing, for example, the yield, or you're lending privately and then obtaining yield, and they don't know who are you withdrawing to. How do you visualize this private yield on BTC, and why do you think it's important?
Yeah. The private DeFi is a bit complex because you would have to assume there's a privacy pool that exists already. So something like privacy pools or Tongo, I think, would enable that builds on Starknet. So then you would have to have some ability to integrate there and then provide yield to a Bitcoin wrapper that might sit there. So you need functionality to build the privacy section, and then you need a separate functionality to somehow insert a Bitcoin wrapper and then generate yield for it. So, for example, a simple version would be if Starknet is able to provide staking yield to a private Bitcoin wrapper. But
Hmm.
the more exciting thing is, let's say you can generate yield on it in other ways. So this sort of ties back to the Bitcoin yield normally. And then one of the most common ways people are generating yields, aside from staking and systematic yield generation, which would be quantitative products, is borrowing against their Bitcoin and then doing stable strategies. So you kind of have something at like 50% LTV, and then you find a stable strategy that maybe generates 10, 15%, and then hopefully you get a Bitcoin yield product, which has to be actively managed, that gets you, like hopefully above 5% yield. So this is something, for example, Edge Capital is a vault curator. They typically do a lot. So they're one of the largest Bitcoin borrowers. So in the Starknet ecosystem, you can use Bitcoin on Vestu to borrow against as collateral, and then you need to think of a stable strategy to pair it with. Um, in the form of private yield, it would almost be like a vault, which you can interact with a privacy pool and input collateral and then generate yield against that connects through Vestu. I don't know if that's possible, but I think that's
Interesting.
what, yeah.
And yeah, wait, does this exist already in the Ethereum ecosystem? Have you seen something like this privacy yield coming from your BTC and maybe in other
I've
networks?
seen I've seen yield. Obviously, we've seen the yield version. On the privacy element, the question is, have we seen this in Aztec or Zama, who are more of the privacy-based ecosystems? I think if they had, let's say, a lending collateral, a lending protocol that was built with privacy in mind, so ZK, then that would have yield, right? But
Hmm.
the part of the issues with connecting with a dApp that is specifically built with ZK and privacy in mind is that you have to bootstrap liquidity completely by itself. So, like you can't access that. You would have to go into that. Let's say if it's in Aztec in a private-based lending protocol, you'd have to go to that lending protocol and then get the yield there. We don't
Hmm.
have a lending protocol that is purpose-built for privacy. So it would be a different challenge on Starknet.
I see, I see. So we haven't seen something like this in production yet in any place.
I'm not
Also,
sure. I
I
imagine
haven't
it
heard
would
of
be available in a
in
completely
this.
private-based application in another private ecosystem, as long as
Hmm.
you can get like yield on your as lending collateral within a private. So the question is, does a private-based lending protocol exist? And I'm pretty sure one does exist. I just don't know one off the top of my head. And in that scenario, you would get yield on it, but then it would be isolated to that ecosystem. And it's not something we have that exists on Starknet.
Interesting, interesting. So now you know people hear that that is an idea that maybe is worth winning the hackathon, right? So, all right. Uh, any question from the chat or from the? You can unmute yourself. Okay, Laura has a question here. Please, you can unmute yourself, Laura. Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay. I was thinking about somehow more of a consumer privacy app, like where a use case in which the privacy, the anonymity of the transaction is related to a need, okay, a need of the market. In particular, it was targeted to the creators market, but yeah, generally it was a way of building private transactions and also connected to yield, but not necessarily, The idea is to build automated private transactions in some dynamics of the creators economy.
Is this
That
like
are
a Patreon, or is this would be payouts to creators?
It's more related to not to big creators. I know a Patreon is not connected to big creators in the mind of people, but that the thing that has been happening in the last few weeks with X that has shut down most of the micro creators economy, of the micro creator economy that was going on X.
In
And
France, for
then,
example. Right? Mhm.
sorry,
Uh,
what happened there?
It happened that basically the new policy is a policy of they are closing the API connection with the website that were distributing incentives for micro creators to produce content for crypto platforms in general. But it wasn't used only by crypto, actually, because micro creators what is called the micro creator economy on X is quite wide, and so my idea was to build not really a platform, but a flow to channel this creators economy without the need to rely on X or any other specific social media, but relying on the secrecy of the transactions,
Right.
microtransactions.
Okay. Okay. Perfect, Laura. What do you think, JY?
I don't quite understand it. I mean,
Maybe. Oh,
yeah,
sorry. Maybe just confirm if I'm wrong, Laura. But what you're mentioning is, yes, like confidential paying confidential transactions so that you can receive the payout in a confidential
Yes.
way, right?
Okay. Let's say I am a creator. Okay, I am a
Uh-huh.
micro creator. I have like 100,000 followers on Twitter, so I produce content, and a lot of times, some projects, crypto projects, like I don't know, nouns, the noun project. Do you know the noun project?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. They have been sponsoring a few creators in TikTok. In their case, they have been sponsoring more on TikTok than on X. But
Mm-hmm.
these creators have produced content, and based on the level of interactions, they have been paid. Okay. This is the micro creators economy. There are actually services, Web2 services, like the.
Laura, let's go to the question because we have several questions here. So what
No,
is
no.
the
The point is, if I create a service that allows entities, crypto entities, to pay micro creators to diffuse awareness about their project in a confidential way.
Mm-hmm. But what is the
Would it?
confidential way there? Who are you hiding the information? What information are you hiding? The
I don't
I
know.
think
amount or
what she's describing is basically KOL payments, but then if you can't pay the KOLs and reveal the information online, so then if you can confidentially pay them, like
Exactly.
so
that's what she's describing. So that
oh
I've
so the
heard of.
amount okay so the amount and the person that receives the money are confidential, right?
Not confidential.
Okay. So, sorry, Jay, wait, go on, please.
Yeah. I think I've seen networks try to address this without the confidentiality. It's just simply you can, a lot of KOL agencies try to do this. It's just like pay us as the middleman, and then we will
Yeah.
direct the payments to KOLs. The challenge there is bootstrapping the KOLs and then getting, you're kind of like a middleman, right? Between the KOLs and then the projects.
Yeah, it was
Um,
the middleman. Yeah, that's true. Okay, that's the challenge. You're right, and that's a challenge that you have to address with the UI or the UX with the flow. How you build the flow.
yeah.
That's the basic idea about which I'm not talking about
I would,
because
if you, I would suggest, Laura, there using, for example, Tongo for the transaction. So Tongo, you can hide the amount and the recipient. So I will build it with Tongo, and also I will put some Garaga, so you can create some zero knowledge proofs that can also keep. So will be kind of connecting Tongo. I don't know exactly how yet, but the technology is behind it. I think yeah, exactly, Laura. Yes, Tongo. I can share. I will share the links in a minute,
okay.
and also connecting that with maybe some zero knowledge proof in Garaga. So I will share to you all these links, and I think you
Thank you.
can see how to connect them in the proper way. Also, we have a stealth addresses, it's something that is new. I will share it with you. But yeah, so sorry, Jay, do you want to mention something about this, or should we go to the next question?
We can go to the next one.
Yeah, perfect. All right, so we will go from
Thank you.
Carlos. No, thank you, Laura. I will send you all this
Yeah.
info in 1 minute. Huh? So Carlos is asking, what are the most interesting goals for Foundation towards BTCFi? Acquiring BTCFi treasuries, transaction volume, lending, and borrowing, trading. What do you think we are missing, Jonathan? And I will even extend this question to not only for Starnet, but in general in the DeFi ecosystem.
In general, I would say TVL is the core metric that people focus on. right? So the vision is you have like 500 billion to $1 trillion in Bitcoin that's not active in DeFi. If you look at the equivalent amount that's active in Ethereum for the right proportion. The question is, what do Bitcoin LPs want? And a lot of them sit at the miner level. Some of them want, that they feel secure with the bridge. So then that's like, in the hands of whatever Bitcoin wrapper bridge technology they're using, but then it's also ensuring that they have high yield available. So, when we talked to a bunch of Bitcoin LPs, they were like, well, if you can get us above 4% on staking, it immediately becomes pretty interesting. If you can get us, above 6, 7% and the risk isn't that high, then we would consider it, right? And then you have a bunch of Bitcoin funds, for example. They're like often $100 to $500 million funds. These are quant shop guys that run systematic strategies, and they can do options volatility underwriting. They can do basis trades. They can do sigma mean reversion strategies. And then these guys generate, I think, around the 7, 8%. So there's an opportunity here if you can connect the yields with the Bitcoin participants. So what I would say focusing on is TVL going up. But when you think of lending, if you put money into a lending protocol and it's borrowed against, you get TVL in the lending protocol. And then if they borrow against it and then deposit into stable strategies, you get a double loop of TVL. So you want to promote lending activity in addition to other things that would generate TVL. Trading is also a focus, but I would simplify it to make it TVL.
All right, Carlos, feel free to ask a further question in the chat if you want to go deeper. So, perfect. So, yes, Carlos is summing up as TVL up, borrowing mixed strategies, less on trading. Perfect. Okay, Fabricio was next. Fabricio is asking, going back to the private yields, diversifying the yield generating sources to integrate real world assets will be innovative. For example, diversifying yield generating sources to integrate real world assets like bonds.
Yes, there's this thread into sustainable yield, right? So a lot of Bitcoin strategies right now are simply token governance funded, right? So a Bitcoin project launches, it's a new project. They don't have token utility. It's $100 million. They pay out token incentives for TVL. The token price just collapses. That's not something that's sustainable. Either it has to be like lending yield, which incentivizes real activity, or things that come from RWAs. So private credit, of course, there's a lot of demand in private credit. If you can somehow take Bitcoin as collateral, borrow stables, and then give the stables as private credit, and you can generate, 10% yields on private credit, then you can hand that back to the participant. I think it works. There have been things that have been brought up like invoices receivables, right? For example, I'm a commodities importer in Dubai, and I have to receive my payments in 30 days. I delegate that risk of the 30-day payment to some person who takes it on. That person gives me the payment now. They take on the risk that they receive the payment in 30 days, and they get a form of yield on it. So this is an idea that people have been used to generate yield on crypto. But within that scenario, there's difficulty in figuring out, I have to secure a sustainable pipeline of these invoice receivables that I can then tokenize online. And then I need to create a vault. I need a pipeline of folks. So you have to figure out the right people to sort of plug into to generate the right forms of yields. But the answer for is RWA yield attractive? Yes, it is, particularly a sustainable yield.
So you got another idea there, Fabricio. For example, in Mexico, there's a lot of correct me if I'm wrong, JY, but also there was a project I remember, I don't know where, but it was using like the yield coming from bonds. I don't remember the country, maybe the USA, something like that. But yeah, the yield was coming from government
Yeah, the Ondo does treasuries, and then
treasury.
Maple does private credit. So their syrup product generates a decent amount of TVL.
You got it there. So all right, so yeah, that's a great idea for this, interacting with real world assets will be interesting to get in sustainable yield. Perfect. Fabricio, feel free to ask a further question in the chat. Someone else here wants to write the question in the chat. If not, if you don't do it in 10 seconds, I will go with one question from Dora Hex. Okay, we got a question here. How fast is Bitcoin network now, especially when it comes to creating a DeFi app? Mm, I I would say here, Emlan, is that you can the natural way to do it here is to bridge, for example, using Atomic. So it's in the most trustless way possible. Atomic, let me write it in the chat, and then you can use Starnet as the DeFi provider or the network where you will be the application that then will give you yield or whatever. And then if you want, you can go back to Bitcoin using the same bridge in as much as a trustless way as possible, Emlanis. So it's not Bitcoin per se where you're building the applications, it's in Starnet. But do you want to say something, JY, about this, or should we go
Now,
to?
you pretty much addressed it. Like once you bring it to Starknet in the form of a Bitcoin bridge, then it's as fast as Starknet is.
Which is very fast, Emlani. So that's the way to do it. So you're using Starnet as the place where you're doing the DeFi applications. You can use Atomic, or you can also use Garden. These are bridges that we have. I will share you also a tutorial. I will share a tutorial in Telegram where I integrate Atomic, Garden, and Near Intense as bridges. So you can bridge from Bitcoin to Starnet and coming back. So yep, perfect. All right. Layer zero. Yes, layer zero. Exactly. Layer zero. Yeah, that this is a good question. Okay. All right. So we have 3 minutes. 3 minutes. So we need to be fast here, J1. Could you enumerate 3 classic finance use cases that are not implemented in Starnet? What would you like to see? I would also recommend you guys to go to the hackathon webpage. There are a lot of ideas that JY and other people already uh, wrote. Exactly. Thank you, JY. And also, just to announce that after this call, immediately after this call, so in 2 minutes, we'll have a session AMA with Benjamin Sturisky, who is an expert in the BTCFi strategy as well. So it's worth coming to the. You have the link to the next session, so come and you can ask Benjamin questions as well. So yes, I will. What are the 3 classic finance use cases that are not implemented in Started yet, JY, that you would like to see?
I don't know if it's practical, but yield basis that Michael Egorov was pretty interesting, right? Like
That
he
make
had
what?
this,
Sorry.
it's
That you,
called yield basis from Michael Egorov. He has it on Ethereum, and it plugs in with the Curve stable swap. So essentially, you can get yield on your Bitcoin without by borrowing against your Bitcoin one for one, getting stables and taking that position and then LPing with it. So then you're getting basically 2x leverage on your Bitcoin for percent APY. I'm not sure if that requires a specific design with an AMM like the Curve AMM, but if we had, we have Bitcoin stable swaps positions enabled through Spline on a Kubo. So if there's some way to repackage Bitcoin borrowing and then yields, I think that would be definitely interesting. Any creative ways to basically do Bitcoin yield that we haven't seen yet.
all right. I will leave it there. I will leave it there. And just so you can quickly in 1 minute answer for this hackathon project, where Starnet is used primarily as a cryptographic verification layer to prove risk rules and invariance for Bitcoin native system without holding BTC or executing laws on chain. Yes. So that I can answer yes or no. Yes, that perfectly. That's actually a very good idea now. So yes, the question is yes. Also, you can ask me in the Telegram chat. And also, Radian is an interchain atomic lending protocol that runs on layer zero. I'd be curious to see if they have private transactions. All right. Okay, I think those are the questions that we have for today. JY, thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for Let us borrow your brain. Please, everyone here, come to the chat. In the chat, I left the link to the Zoom call with Benjamin. Same password. Come. He has, I mean, he works with JY and he's also amazing. So, okay. Thank you, JY. See you very soon.
All right. Cheers, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming.